Sources tell Bloomberg that Turkish bank executives have confronted top officials over the rules that saddled them with government bonds and kept rates artificially low. And that's part of the latest talks this week, included with the finance minister, and the banking regulator, Simone Foxman, is with me from Doha. I mean, this is a thing that came up when I was in Istanbul just 10 days ago, which is the only people that are buying the government bonds, which has had one of the best rallies globally. It is the banks. It's their balance sheets that are getting loaded up with them.
Yeah, that's exactly right. They've had to go along with this, but there are rumblings of discontent among bank executives that are unhappy and concerned about the long-term implications of being forced to hold particularly lira-denominated debt. And this really about some new restrictions that went into place over the summer, which discouraged those banks of holding inflation-protected debt. That's something that the government has put out there in one of the programs to help support, the borrowers, consumers, and the like, and really encourage these banks instead to hold lira-denominated debt. Earlier this week, we heard a report from a local newspaper called Dunya talking about the bankers' fears of systemic risk caused by this. The concern is that the central bank would have to turn around and do something to stem inflation, and then these guys are sitting on lira-denominated debt that yields less than dollar-denominated debt simply because of the kind of rules that the government has had in play. Look, this is not necessarily a change and shift in terms of what's going to happen at the central bank policy, but it definitely does signify some cracking of relationships between the banking sector and between the financial sector. No, the central banker wasn't even there, and that was sort of seen as a little bit of a snub. They were very unhappy with him, sources were telling Bloomberg.
And to Lebanon and Israel, they've signed a U.S. brokered deal that ends a dispute over the gas-rich waters in the Mediterranean. So what is the significance of this?
It was very interesting to see the U.S. kind of come to the table, help these two decide on this deal, because it essentially determines what the border is of these countries offshore at a time when these two countries are still technically at war. They don't have any diplomatic relations, and there's a lot of dispute over their land borders. So we saw them essentially overcome a lot of this animosity, potentially for economic reasons and interests in mining this gas, essentially. There were concerns that we would see this deal not make it to the finish line even after it was announced a couple weeks ago. Benjamin Netanyahu, the leader of the opposition, is running in the election coming up. He has said he's vowed to repeal this if he comes into power. Hezbollah has not always loved the idea of setting any border with Israel, though they've seemed to go along with it for now. Yet I think even the fact that we get Yair Lapid, we get Michel Aoun, the president of Lebanon, signing these deals in separate times yesterday, certainly suggests that we're at least moving forward here, despite some of the underlying criticism of the ongoing disputes between Israel and Lebanon. They can at least get to this economic rationale.